When should therapy come into the picture?
Awesome question. So, Adrian, are you familiar with this term economic moat?
No, please explain.
Okay. So when you buy stocks, how do you choose a stock, right? So there are certain, parameters, PE ratio, the company's business, the competition, stuff like that. So one of the parameters that people look at is called economic moat, MOAT. And if you know, this word moat still, refers to the olden times when there used to be a fortress. And a moat is typically a feature of a lake or water in between the fort and the rest of the land to act as a physical barrier for an army that's trying to attack the fort. That's what a moat is. So they use that metaphor to call an economic moat. So economic moat is, if you had a business called Career Hero, right? You started it.
Yep,
so
I had that.
you had a reasonably good moat because there were not many players who could compete with you, correct? So your business, I would say, had an economic moat and it made it attractive for somebody to invest, for example, right? The same thing actually can be, picturized for our mind. Our mind, when we are untrained, is like a fortress. Our brain is sitting inside our skull and this brain is thinking. It's a thinking brain, right? And we are getting hit constantly by, people talking to us. You're looking at things that may not be helpful. You are listening to things that can be disturbing. So through our sense organs, these are all, I would picture it like arrows being shot at you. Okay, imagine the fort, right? And today, without any training, not everybody is blessed to have a strong moat. I call it the cognitive moat. Okay, so there is not a strong moat for people to be able to fend off these arrows. And then they become mentally ill, because these things get into their system and it affects them. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create two more moats. I'm a huge student of Jordan Peterson, Professor Jordan Peterson. He always says we all are pretty okay. We don't become mentally sick easily. He uses the term called cognitive complexity. And he says, it's when people get hit with multiple things at the same time. Somebody might lose a pet, somebody might lose a loved one, somebody might lose a job, somebody might have, got a diagnosis. All of this happens at the same time. Then what happens is the person thinks, gosh, this is too much, I can't take it. And then he uses the metaphor of a balloon, right? So you blow a balloon, it keeps blowing. And then he says at some point the balloon will burst. And he says that this balloon, which is our mental health, will tend to burst in the space of what he calls as genetic susceptibility. And that susceptibility can be things like schizophrenia or, anxiety disorder and a whole bunch of other mental issues. So he says, people, that is when they become mentally sick, and that is when you give them some therapy. You don't just give somebody who has some problem that can be solved first. The problem with these apps, going back to it, is I don't know when I'm supposed to go to this app. I might at the drop of the first hat straight away go and talk to a counselor and speak to the counselor, and this person will start giving me therapy. Okay, so what we need to do, Adrian, is we need to empower people to build out these two moats. People can be helped and they can be allowed to prevent a mental issue happening to them if organizations, if the government are able to take this and try it out first. So what we do in the Versatile Resilience Program is we build out these moats inside out. So the inside out part is, the first is, as we know, we have a natural moat, and some people, maybe like you and me, we are blessed. We learned all this stuff. Without learning this, even you and me will be vulnerable, right? But you have learned, I have learned, and that we have extended our moat. So using that, you can prevent having to go to the therapy. When do you go to therapy? When complexity has hit so much, when people have ignored or have been kept in the dark about what they could do from time to time as these things came to hit them. Because see, if one arrow is shot at a person, you can stop it. But if you allow that one arrow to come and hit, Then after some time, another arrow hits. And if you don't know how to stop these arrows, eventually you're going to be killed, right? Yeah, that's what is happening today. A lot of young 20-year-olds, which I am now mentoring a few of them, they are, it's not much going wrong with them. It's few things, but it's enough for them to feel completely, blown out. So somebody, and I've done that. So I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm just a common guy who has studied this topic and is using, like real life experiences to then make it easily accessible for people to build out their cognitive modes. So the answer should be there, Adrian. They only have two things, Adrian: behavioral therapy or tablets. That's it. And once you get sucked into that, behavioral therapy, of course, is very dicey because it's about a person listening to your, sob stories and trying to give you some succor. The moment you start taking tablets, you're dead. You don't know where it's going to lead you.
Okay.